Pittsburgh Steelers fans, it is time once again for another edition of the Know Your Enemy podcast. My name is Michael Beck, your deputy editor of BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, and my co-host, as always, one Mr. Geoffrey Benedict, film guru extraordinaire. Jeffrey, how are you doing tonight, sir?
Doing pretty good, Michael. Doing pretty good.
Yeah, that's good to hear. And as always, we like to have a special guest for these shows. So Spencer Schultz from Baltimore Beatdown, thank you for joining the program.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited. It's been interesting having to wait so long, especially in the Ravens case for these divisional games. Usually there's kind of a one-off some point in the first half, but hey, we're going to have a little bit more excitement here in the cold months as AFC North football is intended, as God intended, one might say.
I'm pretty sure I saw the stat today where this is the latest the Steelers and Ravens first matchup of the year has ever occurred. So that's pretty interesting. Of course, I believe it's week 17 or week 18, I guess now, is the next matchup. So coming pretty hot. But obviously the Ravens are in first place of the division. They're honing in on the top seed in the conference, if I do believe. But are the Ravens that team? There's some stats that would say they might not be as dominant as they are, but they keep getting wins, so you can't deny that. Is Baltimore exactly what their record shows?
It's a little bit of a dual-edged sword answering that question, because if you are to tell a Ravens fan at the beginning of the season that they are 8-3, they are holding the number one spot in the conference at this point in the season, they would say sounds about right, but obviously injuries have taken their toll. The Ravens have been sloppy overall. They have really struggled to put together complete games. There's only been, I think, 2 games this year where the offense and defense together have had successful performances, whether you want to measure that by DVOA or measure that by whatever metric you like. And that would be against the Chargers and the Broncos. They had 2 really nice games there from kind of start to finish on both sides of the ball. Other than that, it has been sloppy Joe Central. There have been up and down games where their defense is letting up 80-yard touchdowns. They lead the NFL in number of explosive plays allowed over 40 yards and explosive touchdowns allowed over 40 yards. Their offense, mighty hot to start the season, especially in the second half of football games. They were putting up big points, able to dig themselves out of some really significant holes in the first half. And over the last 3 or 4 or 5 games, they've struggled. Lamar Jackson has struggled mightily, a pretty cold stretch from him, to say the least. And they've somehow managed to continue grinding out games at the end. Even against the Chicago Bears the week prior to this one, they're able to go win a game with a backup quarterback without many, talented players on their offensive line or in their backfield. They're missing some cornerbacks there. They're down to really 2 functional cornerbacks in that game, and they're winning it ultimately. So they've shown resiliency. They've shown a lot of the immeasurable stuff at the end of football games and been able to play really strong situational football. I think one of the sneakiest things about this team is that their defense is number 1 in the NFL in frequency of punts forced on drives. They also are the number 1 third down defense in terms of percentage of getting off the football field. And they're also the number 1 red zone defense in terms of allowing touchdowns versus not when opponents get into the red zone. So as I said, it's a really tough question to answer, but they're continuing to grind out wins somewhat consistently. And there's this kind of growing uncomfortability in the fan base, and everybody's got, are they for real or they're not? A lot of talking points, radio, talk show stuff, and things of that nature. But at this point, they've shown the ability to close out games, and it's hard to measure that, but they have.
Now, one of the stats that calls into question just how good the Ravens are is their point differential. That they're 8-3, but they've only scored 23 more points than they've given up. And I contrast that with like the Philadelphia Eagles, right, who are 5-7 and are plus 31. Right. So the Ravens, would you categorize that more as, the Ravens being an up and down team or a lucky team, or do you think there's actually a character built up into the Ravens that they're finding ways to win games that maybe, they shouldn't, if you look at just numbers, you just look at stats, but they're finding the ways to make the plays when they matter, not, necessarily just dominating games?
Well, you go look at a few of their wins, the Vikings, the Chiefs, the Colts, they're trailing, digging out of holes. Unbelievable comebacks, win probability at certain points, very low, and able to go win those games. So those are They look like spectacular wins in hindsight, but they're 3-point wins, 2-point wins, 1-point wins, very close wins. They also played close games. I know the Steelers can relate to this, and so can the Browns. The Lions, for whatever reason, have just given every team in the AFC North so much trouble. And I think that's a microcosm of the Ravens specifically being forced to use depth very early and often. They have to create really tailored game plans from week to week in order to play away from team strengths. And a lot of that is trying to play keep away. A lot of that is trying to hold the ball. A lot of that is trying to play conservatively on the back end when they keep giving up big plays. Some of these things keep happening, blown assignments and coverage. So they play solid games overall for the most part. Like I said, the offense has struggled, but defensively, there's just even the Browns game on Sunday. I think Baker had maybe 240 yards passing. 3 of those came on 2. One was a deep cross. One was a sail concept, both kind of single high beaters. And then another one on a play action where Marlon Humphrey just kind of lets, I think it was Austin Hooper. It was either Austin Hooper or Harrison Bryant go, and 40 yards. So there's like 3 plays accounted for like 55% of their passing yards there. And it's just bad execution on assignments defensively. I think it's kept a lot of teams in games. The Bears, for instance, score a touchdown where, the Brandon Stevens, the Ravens rookie safety who's come in to start, it's a cover 0. Everybody knows cover 0. It's been a huge talking point around the Ravens in the NFL for like 2 years now, even though they've been doing it for like 15. But Brandon Stevens fails to shoot a gap. Andy Dalton gets to hold the ball. Chris Westry, the Ravens corner, tries to play the sticks. Boom, it's a long touchdown. So a lot of these are blown assignments. And then, like I said, the Ravens offense has just struggled. So there's a lot of inconsistency. The Ravens have shown the ability, though, at the end of games, regardless of whether it's defensively needing to make a play or offensively needing to sustain a drive, that they've just been able to get it done. So it's kind of that immeasurable aspect of being efficient at the end of games and doing a good job with clock management, making sure that you use your timeouts early enough so that you get the ball back with ample time to go down and score, or vice versa, bleeding the clock out as much as you can so your opponent doesn't. So they've done a good job late. I give John Harbaugh a ton of credit. He's kind of really been able to play kind of mistake-free coaching decisions late in games as well. So they've done a good job closing out, but this team could easily be on the other side of the sword if they're making mistakes as a coaching staff, if they're not able to kind of pick themselves up, go into tempo offense or go settle at the end of games. So they're continuing to drag them out. I think if the Ravens were, let's say, 6-6 right now, nobody would bat an eye. It would, or 5-6, 6-5, whatever it would be, nobody would bat an eye. It would be explainable every single game they play, aside from 2 or 3, I guess, because the Bengals kind of ran shop on them a little bit. So all but 3 games have been relatively close, and they've just continued to have a little bit of a horseshoe up their bum.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with having that as long as you keep winning, right? But in perspective of the rivalry itself between these two teams, we know how historic every Steelers-Ravens matchup is. From the Ravens' perspective, are you enjoying kind of watching the downfall of Ben Roethlisberger as his career kind of winds up? I'm just curious what Ravens fans think, seeing Ben's numbers taper off and not just pull the Steelers to wins on a consistent week-to-week basis.
It really frustrates me personally to watch. It's frustrating to watch the way that he kind of is so immobile at this point in his career and the things he still tries to do and some of the goofy things that happen. It's really frustrating just because I don't know why. It just makes me uncomfortable that they haven't been able to find a contingency plan for him yet, and that they're still it's really hard to put into words. He's still capable of running such a specific offense with quick timing and floating balls down the sideline and throwing some really accurate 9 balls and laying it up for Chase Claypool. The timing, how smart he is still. But when you go look at guys that are kind of at the similar crescendo of their career, where it's, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, some of these other guys, it kind of reminds me, I guess, a little bit more of an Eli Manning, but he's still able to get things done and can conduct good drives and sustain success, like have a couple scoring drives. It just makes me uncomfortable to watch. I don't really enjoy it, and I don't really count the Steelers out either. A Mike Tomlin team, I will never count out. A Ben Roethlisberger team, I will never count out. And if any Ravens fan who does, go watch last year. They give the Ravens trouble. They can give anyone trouble. They're extremely well coached. They always will be. They can execute. They can go play with good teams. Sometimes they'll lose to bad teams at this point, but It's just really a peculiar situation from my eyes, at least. And I know that Ravens fans kind of Ben Roethlisberger is washed and this and that. And to a degree he is, but mentally he can still just string together drives through whatever sort of dark magic he still has in his back pocket. And it's just kind of a perplexing offense to watch overall.
That is an interesting way to put it. You spoke about Mike Tomlin being a great coach. And one of the big points in this rivalry has been Harbaugh and Tomlin head and matching up. How do you look as a Ravens fan at Harbaugh and Mike Tomlin in this rivalry?
I think they're pretty similar coaches in many ways. The way that they are kind of a football executive, and there's these whispers at times where there's a guy like Andy Reid or Sean McVay or Kyle Shanahan. Oh, they're not X's and O's guys. They're not X's and O's guys. What do they really do? If I ever got the pleasure of getting Mike Tomlin or John Harbaugh on a whiteboard for 2 hours, I would learn an inordinate amount of football, and so would 99.999% of humans in the world. So these guys just do such a great job keeping their teams competitive through discipline and depth. They hold every player accountable from the top to the bottom. And like you said, it used to be, Ray Lewis, Hines Ward, Ed Reed, Troy Polamalu, Ben, Flacco, Ray Rice, Todd Heap, Joey Porter, Rod Woodson, all these different names. But the two that have kind of prevailed now for the length of the rivalry are those two. And they've been the story that have continued it. They've played on Thanksgiving. They've had interesting moments. Harbaugh getting upset after games, or Tomlin sticking his leg out a little bit on a Thanksgiving game, or so many interesting aspects. But both of these coaches, they take themselves seriously. They take their team seriously. They take the 70th guy on the practice squad as seriously as they do, a starter. And I think it pays off. There is no letdown. They stay even keel. They conduct themselves with a definite air of professionalism outwardly, and inwardly they have a lot of intensity, a lot of passion, and are smart guys. So I just think that there's a lot of parallels between the two. I think that they ultimately, there could have been, a little feisty animosity towards the beginning when Tomlin was early in his tenure and Harbaugh was early in his tenure. But at this point, they know each other. They smile when they see each other. They have a lot of words for each other and nice, calm conversations before games that last a long time. So these two have just maintained competitive airs to their team. I think that they do a great job of bringing in coaches that fit the same energy or style or passion that they have. A lot of veteran coaches. Rarely is it going to be these up-and-coming, young, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed offensive coordinators or defensive coordinators. It's going to be guys that they've had ties to for 20 years. It's going to be guys that they know and trust, and they're going to give those guys a little bit of autonomy as well. And I think that's what makes them unique. I think that Baltimore and Pittsburgh are kind of coordinators' havens in different ways because they do get a good bit of autonomy. They're going to get to run. They're going to get some input for sure. They're going to have certain ways that Harbaugh and Tomlin want their teams to play. But at the end of the day, you're going to be able to conduct your scheme and make it fit, the energy or the style of those respective coaches. And I think that they're now going for, I think, the second most, or maybe it's the first most. I just saw it today. Games that coaches have coached against each other on the same team at this point. I think this is the 23rd matchup, if I'm not mistaken. So over the years, it's just become this really classic, I think kind of classy connection between the two, and the parallels, the way they speak about each other outwardly. And I really enjoy it. I think it's really pleasant at this point. And the rivalry between these two teams isn't as like salt, piss, and vinegar as it used to be, but it still has kind of that same passion, and it's become a storied rivalry at this point. So I enjoy it very much.
So the Steelers' defense this year has really struggled against the run after a number of key injuries here. The Ravens' offense obviously is built on the running game. What should we expect in this game? Should Steelers fans be nervous that there could be a number of rushing yards put up against this defense? Could Lamar Jackson and company go wild?
Well, the Ravens, I would say, have an effective run game still, but they don't really have an explosive run game. And I recall last year in Baltimore, the Ravens were able to rack up well over 200 yards. J.K. Dobbins was really gashing them and doing a great job being able to get, 8-yard gains, explosive gains of 15 yards, and able to string those out. And they simply don't have the horses this year to do that. But Devontae Freeman, I think, has quietly done a really nice job for Baltimore. Their offensive line is not a uber talented group, but they're diverse. It's Greg Roman's offense. They're going to run man. They're going to run gap. They're going to run, zone. They're going to hit you from all angles. They're going to have guys in motion. They're going to have jet sweeps, counter bash, all these different concepts that they're going to hit you with. So that allows the offensive line to kind of keep that card up their sleeve to be able to hit you where you're not expecting it. And with Devin Bush struggling a little bit this year, and we'll see what happens with TJ Watt. But yeah, it's Tyson Alualu, a player that was really effective last year and has struggled to stay healthy this year. So I don't think the Ravens are going to be able to really hurt the Steelers on flipping the field with runs, but they continue to grind out first downs. Power situations, third or fourth and short, they are running downhill. Latavius Murray, I keep calling him the zombie shark because whatever the play is, he does not care what happens around him. He is going to hit it full stride. He will run over his own offensive linemen and injure them. He is like a mindless killer. He's been really good on short yardage situations. And Devontae Freeman has no juice left at this point in terms of he doesn't have a fifth gear or a sixth gear, maybe not even a fourth gear. But man, oh man, is he cutting guys up in the hole. He's been able to go get 8-yard gains and 7-yard gains and make a guy miss here and there. I think he's made someone miss in 5 straight games at this point. So he's quietly done a nice job. So I think that the Steelers are going to key on Lamar Jackson. They've always done that. They, are going to surf. They're going to have an end, go hit him and run with him. And they're going to focus their linebackers on containing him as they always have and will probably continue to do, especially in those 5-man fronts. But I think the Ravens will, run the ball early and often. I don't think they're going to be averaging 7 yards a carry, but they can go squeak out 4.5, maybe 5 yards a carry and move the chains when they need to. So I think it's going to be a little bit more difficult for the Ravens to activate the run game in that way. But like you said, the Steelers are a little bit beat up and have had some struggles. So perhaps they can hit a big one. I just don't know that it's going to happen from the running backs. Maybe a guy like Devin Duvernay, who they've been using as kind of a motion H they can use on some counter bash and hit a big one, something like that. But it'll be another knockout, drag out brawl between these two, especially in the trenches on that side of the ball.
Early in this season, talking about the Ravens just among our staff on our Slack channel, it was very much like Lamar Jackson is just dragging this team to wins. Like their offense was just basically Lamar Jackson doing incredible stuff. Has that changed? What's going on with Lamar Jackson and what kind of season is he having and what's he like right now? What can we expect to see here?
It's been a really weird season. I think that there's a lot of shades of last year of what we saw. Lamar came out. There's a lot of kind of privacy about what he likes to do with throwing coaches in the offseason. This year, we got a story for the first time, really, where he allowed someone from the outside to come and really take a hold of what he was doing mechanically and some different things. And he ended up liking it because he likes to throw from a lot of different arm slots. He's very adamant about that. He doesn't think that people understand it like he does, and he's good at it. He has some weird throws as a result of it, usually as a result of his base. But over time, he's grown and grown and grown. So like last year, this year, we see him come out against the Raiders and over the first month of the season, and he has this nice, sturdy, balanced base. His feet are split, shoulder width. He's staying throw ready. He's scanning the field really well. He's manipulating defenders with his eyes. He's reading leverage well, all things that he's done before. And just like last year, the offensive line has a little bit of struggles in pass protection, and suddenly he's dropping his eyes. He's tucking the ball. He's, getting ready to run a lot. He doesn't seem to trust this offensive line. And I think that over the last couple of weeks, they've done a really nice, they get beat. Like I said, they're not a super talented unit, but they've done a nice job using Pat Ricard, using Eric Tomlinson, using Mark Andrews in the backs to take away kind of defense's primary pass rushing threat. And in this Browns game, like we've seen a couple times in the last month, like I mentioned, he is dropping his eyes and missing wide open receivers against blown coverages. And that is the exact same thing we saw last year. And that's why the Ravens had to really lean on their run game. They ended up going into empty a lot, motioning J.K. Dobbins last year, running counter bash out of it. They were running for like 265 yards a game down the stretch last year to push themselves into the playoffs. And his timing wasn't there. When he sees something, he's not trusting it. We end up seeing a lot of these pump fakes. And it's not, the Ben Roethlisberger shoulder roll. It's the ball's coming up and he's pulling it back down because he doesn't like it. We've seen that time and time again. The Steelers forced a fumble on that in Baltimore in the red zone last year when he did something like that. So hesitation and I think kind of not a lot of trust in his pass pro. It feels like his internal clock is off a little bit. He hasn't been able to connect on as many deep shots. He was pushing the ball downfield at a historic rate through the first 2 months of the season. He was averaging like over 12 yards per throw in terms of average distance of target. And we've seen that reduce. Teams have respected it a little bit more. Guys have come and gone. Lamar's sick for a while. That could contribute, but I don't love to talk about that because I've already seen this before. He was sick with COVID last year, I guess. So maybe there's a parallel there, but he just doesn't seem to really trust his guys to go make plays at times. He ends up forcing the ball to Mark Andrews a little bit too much. And there's guys like Sammy Watkins and Rashad Bateman you'd like to see get involved a little bit more, who come open quite a good bit. And he just isn't really reading the field well right now. And it's a lot of the stuff that we saw last year. So he still maintains the threat with his legs. He still can make unbelievable plays. He can still fit balls in weird places and has a ton of arm talent and things like that. But he's just not playing with as much kind of instinctual confidence as a result of tried practice as he has in 2019, as he did earlier this season when he's, averaging 400 yards a game at one point. I think about 9 games in, he was on pace to break the NFL's yards per game total offense over a game and over a 16 game and obviously over a 17 game stretch. And it's been a little bit contained now, more so. The Miami Dolphins, I think, rattled him a little bit on a Thursday night where he, faces a ton of pressure, isn't able to connect with guys in stride, has a couple things go wrong. And there's been some variance with turnovers and things that haven't gone his way. But ultimately, Jackson, still is a great threat, but it's difficult at this point in the season to really dig your heels back in and go back to where you were 2 months ago in terms of mechanics. Feels like some things have impacted him. There's various factors, but I think that he's still a very dangerous player, but he's not as consistent as he was earlier in the year.
So with this team, I guess, obviously you mentioned the offensive line, and one of the members of that line is a former Steeler, Alejandro Villanueva. How has he stepped in? I know he struggled a decent bit at the end of his Steelers tenure. How has he looked as in the purple and black uniform?
It's a lot of the same things we saw in Pittsburgh. I mean, he's 6'9". He has a prodigious wingspan. He's very high cut. He doesn't have super, he's not this sand in the pants guy that has all this stopping power in his legs. I wouldn't say that he's stiff, but he's just so darn tall. And he's a really high variance kind of risk reward pass protector, I'd say, where he shoots his hands for these snatches. He goes for the Hamilton technique a lot. He wants to shoot his long arms down over top so that he can reset and win inside. And when he loses cleanly and quickly. And it's a big time pressure that ruins a play. But I think that he's done a nice job overall in terms of staying competent, competitiveness. He's been a really nice run blocker at times. I think that a lot of Steelers fans, were like, oh, well, good luck. He's not going to fit in Baltimore. He's not blocking the run. Well, the Ravens run a much different scheme up front than they do in Pittsburgh. So he's done a nice job in the run game. He's been able to lay on guys. In power situations, he's been a mega factor using his length to down block and really move guys. He has good hand placement in the run game. He just is almost too big to play tackle. He's a little bit too tall. He's a little bit, too long, where it can be to his detriment at times. He, like I said, he just doesn't have the stopping power in his legs. So he has to kind of win with his arms. And when someone gets into his chest pads, they can move it. So he's definitely let up some pressures, let up some sacks, continued to hustle, continued to win reps. He's had some really kind of teach tape on some of these snatches that he's done in pass protection quite a few times. But you see him try to spend training camp on the right side. Ronnie Stanley ends up not being able to go. He switches back to the left side after week 1. Looks a lot better on the left side. So he can be gotten. He loses a couple every game, but I think it gets a little bit exaggerated because when he loses, it's usually a big loss, more so than kind of, maintaining a loss around the edge and having a hand on a guy. Someone will come completely clean because he's so aggressive in his hand placement that it ends up with a big loss. So I like the addition. He's really been invaluable. Ravens fans hate him to death because he loses. And I think they're used to the standard that Ronnie Stanley has set and Orlando Brown with being able to play in this kind of run-heavy offense that sets guys up to not lose much in the pass game. And he's lost a lot. The Ravens throw the ball more. He loses, but I think that he's done a nice job considering the value they got on him, considering where he is in this point in his career. And he's continued to compete. He stayed healthy and is definitely going to be looking forward to this one.
Now, with the Steelers likely not having TJ Watt, they're also missing 2 guys who last year and previous years before that were big time defenders against the Ravens, always had really big plays and seemed to really do well against the Ravens in Stephon Tuitt and Bud Dupree. I think Stephon Tuitt had a couple phenomenal games in the last couple of years against the Ravens. And Bud Dupree, his stats are always better against the Ravens than anyone else. If those guys, with two of them out, definitely, and like you said, Tyson Alualu, who's been big in the middle against the Ravens, and likely without TJ Watt, what do the Ravens have to fear on the Steelers defense when you can look and see what, like, the Steelers giving up rushing yards to just about everybody? I imagine a lot of Raven fans are thinking like they're just going to run all over the Steelers, and I know a lot of Steeler fans are thinking, "Oh my goodness, this is the worst time to face the Ravens." Do you think that matters, and what do you think is going to happen here?
Another couple of players I would add on to that even are Vince Williams, who has been phenomenal as a run blitzing inside linebacker. And as a pass rusher, hitting the A-gap. I don't know that there were many better in the NFL over the last couple of years at hitting the A-gap like he did against the run and the pass, being just a real kind of brick, outhouse, so to speak, to be able to make plays against the run. Mike Hilton being so smart, able to pressure off the side, and being a great run defender, probably the best run defending nickel in the NFL. So plenty of losses there for the Steelers. Absolutely. I don't know that there's, other than Minkah Fitzpatrick, especially if there's no TJ Watt, Cam Hayward, they're probably going to be able to assault with multiple bodies, a ton of concepts, running at him, running away from him, combo blocks, trapping him, all kinds of stuff to be able to throw him for a loop. So he's going to be kind of their center of focus there. But I would just say that to not fear a Pittsburgh Steelers team, defense specifically, that can play with such physicality and can continue to pull themselves up for this game. Like I said, they do the scrape exchange against the option stuff really well. They know the Ravens option concepts better than anyone in the NFL does. They've done a good job stringing them out. They don't want Lamar Jackson to be the one to beat them. And like I said, in terms of running the football, if you're happy letting J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards beat you, you're ecstatic to let Devontae Freeman and Latavius Murray beat you. So I think that kind of game planning around that for the Ravens is key. And I don't know that there's a ton to fear other than the fact that the Steelers are going to want to finish plays, man. This is the Steelers-Ravens rivalry. They're going to want to be as physical as possible. If there was a game for them to have, the win one for the Gipper mentality and pull themselves up by their bootstraps and go finish plays, hit through the whistle, get a couple, unnecessary roughness. Who cares, man? It's the Ravens and the Steelers. You gotta play through the whistle. You gotta finish. You gotta wrap up. You gotta make plays. Got to tip balls. Got to get Lamar Jackson rattled. And I think that the Steelers are going to be able to figure out a couple ways to do so. I mean, teams have thrown so much at the Ravens this year in terms of different looks, and I think that we're going to see another layer of that with this Steelers game this weekend. But it is a tall task for the Steelers. They, are playing guys like Derek Tuska, playing guys like all over the front that don't have a ton of experience. Alex Highsmith is a supreme athlete, but very inexperienced, and not having TJ Watt is going to put a lot of the onus on him a little bit more. If I'm not mistaken, him and Hayward end up aligning to the same side of the formation a good bit, and those guys are going to get a lot of bodies on them. So it's a tall task for sure, but I just think any Ravens fan to look at this game and go, oh, we're going to run right through the Steelers. You can have that kind of blind fandom, but I think that the Steelers do a great job of game planning against the Ravens run game, and the Ravens don't have running backs to make them miss or hurt. Taco Charlton getting in there is an athletic guy. Joe Hayden potentially coming back for this one. Minkah Fitzpatrick potentially, or not potentially. Minkah Fitzpatrick will be active in this one. So I think that the Ravens definitely have the advantage on paper, but how many times have we seen things go awry in this rivalry?
Now, a couple quick questions before we let you out of here. First and foremost, what do you think the final score of this game is going to be, and how is this game going to play out?
I did predict that the Ravens would sweep the Steelers back in April. I think that I don't feel as confident. I thought that Lamar Jackson, has really struggled. The team that's had his number in terms of preventing him from consistently beating them with his arm or really with his legs is the Steelers. I think that's the team that you want to look to, even though, Jeff mentioned a ton of guys that they had more talent, Tuitt, Hayward, Watt, Vince Williams, all, Alualu, all these guys up front, that they could do some different things in other teams. But Jackson, like I said, not in a great place right now. If there's a time for him to take himself seriously and prove that he's going to be able to settle himself down, make the right reads, deliver the ball with what he practiced this offseason, it's this year. So I'll stick with what I thought to go with. I think the Ravens are going to win this one. I think that the Steelers are going to be able to manufacture a couple scoring drives just through, like I said, Ben Roethlisberger can get the ball out real quick, and Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool, Najee Harris are guys that can make guys miss after the catch. So I think the Steelers will be able to score on like 2 or 3 drives. If it's touchdowns or field goals, I think will be the key here. So let's go, 26-16 Ravens, I'll go with.
Yeah, I think that's a totally fair score prediction too. I think we'll see a lot of that as the time goes on. But Spencer, before we let you out of here, is there anything you want to plug for the people?
Yeah, absolutely. You can always follow me at Ravens4Dummies, Ravens4Dummies on Twitter, BaltimoreBeatdown.com. If you're looking for NFL draft content, if you're looking for a look around for AFC North content, find me at BaltimoreBeatdown.com as well. I also do the Sports Info Solutions Rookie Handbook. I'm big into scouting, so once draft season hits, I kind of solely focus there, and I put out a lot of tape. So if you want to come talk NFL draft, get some videos, look at some All-22, all that good stuff, you can always find me on Twitter. Again, that's at Ravens4Dummies. Gentlemen, I appreciate it so much, and hopefully we have another classic game in this rivalry with some fun plays, some high emotions, and tons of drama.
Really couldn't ask for anything else. But Spencer Schultz, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, man.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
All righty, Steeler fans. So if you are hanging out with us right now, we're going to flip over to part 2. So that means if you're on YouTube and Facebook, just hang tight. We're not going anywhere. But if you're on your podcast platform, flip over to part 2 right now. Geoffrey Benedict can celebrate his Michigan Wolverines in the second half of the show, and we'll be right back. All righty, Pittsburgh Steeler fans, time for part 2 of Know Your Enemy. I'm Michael Beck. He's Geoffrey Benedict, breaking down the Pittsburgh Steelers and Baltimore Ravens for their first matchup of the 2021 season. Geoffrey, your Michigan Wolverines, yes, you're wearing the jersey. They pulled off the W for the first time in like 50 years or something like that. But anyway, they knock off Ohio State. Obviously, you're in good spirits after that one.
Yeah, I have this deal with my wife. I'm all like, because once the Steelers football game ends, I'm like dead to the world until the middle of Monday, right? Like I have my films, I have podcasts, I have all my stuff, right? So they know as soon as that football game ends, like don't talk to me for like 24 hours, basically. So because of that, I'm not allowed to watch football 2 days a week. Like I can't do both days of the weekend. So I missed a lot of Michigan games. This past weekend, right? I was like, you know what? It's Ohio State. I'm going to watch that. We had friends over on Sunday. I didn't watch the Cincinnati game at all.
Good for you.
Until the game ended. And I knew the score, and I had to go. I went and watched the like condensed version. I've been watching film on it. Obviously, I have to watch it like 4 times since then. But I did not watch it live in the moment. Instead, I watched last weekend. I watched my Michigan Wolverines finally beat Ohio State. It's first time in my son's lifetime. He was born in 2012, and they last beat Ohio State in 2011. And he was there watching it with me, and I was like, "Yes." So I'm happy because I made the right choice. Sorry about all the people who watched and were emotionally invested in the Steelers game, because that wasn't me. I knew they lost, and when I watched it, I had no investment in the game whatsoever. It was kind of nice.
Hey, that was some ugly football that you missed out on, so I don't think anyone's going to be upset with you because that was a chore to get through. Heck, I'm running the social media for BTSC, so those live tweets during the games, there's definitely been some points this year where I'm like, you know what, I kind of want to turn the TV off, but my contract doesn't let me, folks. That's not happening. We're going to fight through these brutal games, and obviously you've watched it back a couple times now. Is this the worst the Steelers have played since before 2003?
Man, I think it's the worst. Man, I'm debating because there's 2 31-point losses, right? That we have to compare here. That game, and then the 2016, the nightmare in Philadelphia. I think everyone knows that game. I think everyone remembers the Philadelphia losses. But those don't hurt. You're like, oh, they lost again in Philly. What's new? Every 4 years, you just go to Philadelphia, and no matter what the shape of the teams is, when you show up in Philadelphia, you just know you're going to get absolutely destroyed, right? Because for some reason we can't play in the city of Philadelphia. I don't know. I think it might be like a legal ramification of their Steagles years, like that we're not allowed to play football in the city of Philadelphia, and so they have to like kind of skirt that. I don't know, but it's those two games, and this hurt because this is the Bengals losing by 31 to the Bengals. But I don't know what's more fascinating to me is the fact that the last three games the Bengals have played in the AFC North all involved a score of 41, which isn't even like a normal football score because they beat the Ravens 41-17, they beat the Steelers 41-10, and they lost to the Browns 41-16. It's like it's a bizarre season. It's that kind of a season. It was a bizarre, awful game, and it's just it was awful.
Yeah, and right now the Steelers currently hold, for you draft buffs out there, they're in the 16th slot. They are the middle of the pack in the NFL. You look at the rest of the Steelers' schedule, it feels like there's good odds they start sliding down that list fairly quickly, and perhaps like a rock as the weeks go on here. Geoffrey, are you worried that this could be the Steelers' first losing season under Mike Tomlin, and the first one of the Ben Roethlisberger era, which started in 2004?
How crazy would it be for Ben Roethlisberger to set a rookie record for wins, and then his first losing season is his last? But I mean, that's really like the story of his career as it kind of went. His most successful years were early on. I mean, when you win, 2 Super Bowls in your first 5 years in the league, that's pretty crazy. And yet, that's what he did. And then, 2010, he was back there, and he hasn't been back since. And the closest we made it was, with the conference championship game where the Patriots absolutely destroyed us. Like, no, that was the Broncos. Yeah. The tight loss.
That was divisional.
That was a divisional game. I'm thinking of that one. The Broncos game. Oh man, yeah, that season. Wow.
Oh man, a healthy Steelers team in 2015 wins Super Bowl 50. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah,
seriously, go back.
Yeah,
the injury list on that divisional round was ridiculous for the Steelers, and they still almost went to the conference title game. But still, This year specifically, they got the Ravens ahead of them right now. Is this the first time Lamar Jackson has like a good game against the Steelers? Because it looks like TJ Watt's going to be out. Looks like Joe Hayden's going to miss another game. Lamar Jackson hasn't played a good game against the Steelers in his career yet, which is kind of hard to believe. But it feels like this one could be the first one.
Yeah, they've always been able to stop Lamar Jackson, but that's because they dominate the middle of the line with their defensive linemen. And then you had TJ Watt, like his job every year. Like, you remember when Gus Edwards ran crazy on him, like it was because TJ Watt was just firing off the line straight at Lamar, no matter what. Cause they have that veer play they run. That's basically a read option where he just reads that end. They don't block TJ Watt. They let him run in. And if TJ Watt is coming to the quarterback, he hands it off and the guy slips up the field in front of him. And if he goes for the running back, Lamar takes it and runs outside. They run that on everybody. The Steelers' solution to that is always hit Lamar Jackson. Just always hit him, no matter what. Send TJ in there. TJ get hands on him, wrap him up, push him something where you don't get, a penalty, but always make contact with Lamar Jackson on those plays. And then Gus Edwards runs all over us. But as long as you can, keep the score tight, you're taking Lamar completely out of the game. And then when they need him to throw the ball, he's been getting bumped and thrown around all game, right? He doesn't do well. That's been their strategy all this time. But that worked because you won the middle of the line without TJ Watt helping. And then behind that line, counting TJ Watt, Bud Dupree, and Devin Bush, they had 3 of the most athletic linebackers in the NFL. Bush isn't that guy this year, right? He is not that athletic. He's lost a lot of his speed this year with injuries. Bud Dupree's not here. Alex Highsmith's not that guy. We've seen quarterbacks run and escape the pocket and run on the Steelers. Like, they're not that team this year. So the answer to that question is yeah. Yeah, I think they're going to have a real problem with Lamar Jackson because you can't run your strategy that's worked all these years. You don't have the personnel. He'll just hand the ball off. And if TJ Watt's playing, or even if he's not, if you're taking Alex Highsmith, you're taking the edge rusher out of the run blocking equation. You're -1. The Steelers, when they're +1, can't tackle people. They can't get them to the ground. How are you going to do it when you're giving up numbers? It should be ugly.
With Hayden out of the lineup, and we've seen it a few weeks now with Joe Hayden missing time, Sutton, James Pierre, Akilla Witherspoon, whoever it is, someone's getting torched deep. I have a feeling this game we might see Hollywood Brown go like Gonzo for a couple deep touchdowns. What are they going to have to do to try to stop him? And does that start up front with making Fitzpatrick not have to step up in the run game to be able to actually play the deep whatever of the field? Or is this just going to be an inevitability that there's going to be a couple deep shots taken on these corners?
Man, it's rough. That's a rough one because you're sitting there thinking, how are we going to stop Lamar Jackson? And one of the things I was going to say was you're going to have to bring Minka and Edmonds both up. Focus on the middle of the run and then ask your safeties to crash down and stop Lamar. Like, that's really where I'm looking and saying, I don't know any other way they're going to be able to contain Lamar. But if you've got both those guys kind of up a bit, reading the run game, and we're talking, you're talking right there, like, yeah, we've been getting beat for a big play. Yeah, that's going to be super rough. One of the things they've done with Terrell Edmonds that I expect to continue is they have him come up in the box and align almost as a linebacker. And then still, his job is still to cover somebody. Against Detroit, it was bad enough when they finally solved that Detroit run game. He was covering wide receivers or tight ends in the slot while playing like a linebacker. Like, he's reading run first. And then once it's clear it's not a run, he's looking to find the guy that he's going to cover and chasing after him. It was insane. Like, you're not going to be able to do that against Baltimore. And if you don't, how bad are you getting gashed in the run game? So it's Minka helps back there, but and Terrell Edmonds has been much better in deep zone. He has not been getting beat on his side as much as he used to. But man, how are you going to do that when you're going to have them in run support? I don't even know. Like, I don't know. They're going to have to pick one. And with Lamar Jackson, I mean, you can call a pass play, and if you don't have people to stop him, it's a run play. It was a pass, but now it's a run. Why? Because Lamar will just take the ball and run. So, yeah, it could be rough.
Well, since the negativity's flowing a little bit right now, let's drop this bomb. Are the Steelers going to win another game this year?
Yes. I still think they end up 8-8-1. I think they find a way to go 8-8 in a 17-game season, just because that would be like I think that would make everyone the maddest they could possibly get. Like, all the Tomlin haters would be like, "Oh, he's still 8-8," and we'd be like, and the other people would be like, "Yeah, still hasn't had a losing season." I hope it just seems so perfect. Once they tied Detroit, it was like this 8-8 is back on the table, right? And I think they're gonna win some of these games. They are.
In order to do that, they'll have to turn the tide really, really quick here because they're playing some terrible football. But specifically this game, what is the offense going to have to do to put points on the board?
Oh man, now you're getting me in the part. What would they have to do? I don't know. I don't know. Block some people, like run routes and actually get it. I mean, it's not technique. It's execution at this point. It's like, guys, actually block people, run good routes, and when someone's wide open, say maybe running down the field wide open and the safety is not anywhere close to where he's running and the cornerback's behind him, maybe don't throw the ball behind him. Maybe lead the guy down the field. Maybe lead him into the middle a little bit. When the safety has no respect for those routes, maybe actually throw them, which is something I've complained. I've complained about Ben Roethlisberger not throwing that route forever. And we just saw him, like Claypool comes inside and is like, free real estate, let's go. And Ben's like, yeah, but I could throw it outside and behind you. And, there's a defensive back there that'll catch it if you don't want to catch that ball, Chase. I don't know, man. I don't know what they're going to have to do. What they're going to have to do is throw the ball to Pat Freiermuth in the red zone, because that clearly works. And they're going to have to block some people. Is Kevin Dotson have any chance of being back this game?
I thought he was on the IR, so I think he misses at least 2 more games.
Oh, gosh. They put him on IR. I may have read that and just blocked it out of my memory and refused to accept it. We do some breathing exercises now. Okay, go ahead.
And on top of that, too, Joe Haeg is also out of the lineup, I believe. I don't know if he's on IR, but no, he's on the COVID list.
No, Super Bowl winner Joe Haeg. No.
So, yeah, that's...
How about J.C. Hassenauer? Is he playing? No, I don't think he's.
That's also a good question. I'm not.
I think did he go on IR? I don't even know anymore. Like they're like so and so's going to miss the game, and I'm like, yeah, you and everyone else.
Nameless gray faces, I think, is the famous line. But
the official name of the Steelers injury report.
Defensively, though, are the Steelers just going to have to send the house at Lamar Jackson? Like they got to do something different, and what they're doing right now is just pitiful. What kind of defense do they need to throw at Baltimore here to try to do something? Because nothing has worked the last couple weeks.
Well, first off, I'm gonna shout out myself and do a little self congratulations here. If people were reading the site, I think it was the day of the game, maybe. I had an article come out saying TJ Watt would be the difference in the Bengals game. And basically my argument was to find out if TJ Watt was healthy or not, all you need for that game, all you need to do is look at the final score, because it'll tell it. Because the Bengals, basically, Joe Burrow's been tearing up any team that blitzes him. That's how they beat the Ravens. The Ravens blitzed Joe Burrow more than anyone else, and he absolutely tore him apart for it. But you also have to hit Joe Burrow. If you want to beat the Bengals, you have to hit Joe Burrow. But in his second season, unlike his first, he learned how to read the blitz, and now you can't blitz him. If you blitz him, he's going to tear you up. And so I was like, the only way the Steelers win this game is if they are getting pressure with a 4-man rush, which means TJ Watt is healthy, because that's the only way that happens right now. Right? This is where we are. This is the team we live and root for. So TJ Watt wasn't healthy. They couldn't get pressure with 4 men. When they tried to do 4 men, it didn't work. When they tried to blitz him, he burned them on for it. This game, coming up against the Ravens, they are going to have to hold the middle. I expect to see Cam Hayward in the middle again. You have to hold the middle of the line without throwing extra bodies at it. And then you're going to have to blitz the outside. You're going to have to do those outside edge blitzes with linebackers, safeties, whatever. You're going to have to, because the only way the Steelers win this game is to take away Lamar running outside. And teams have been destroying the Steelers running outside, because Terrell Edmonds is doing 3 different jobs in the defensive secondary. He's not just scouting and chasing people like he used to when they faced Kyler Murray or Lamar Jackson, or he's just following them and being like, yeah, you want to run off the outside, I'll be running right there with you. And then there's 2 people there to help tackle you. Devin Bush used to do the same. The number of times where you can watch on film Lamar Jackson running to the sideline, and Devin Bush and Terrell Edmonds are running step for step with him, right, to make it a 1 or 2 yard gain. That's not going to be this game. Devin Bush isn't that dude this year. You're going to have to attack those outside lanes and really disrupt their outside running game somehow, and then make him beat you with his arm. That's really the chance they have.
So Sean Manahan throws his suggestion here of how the Steelers should play defense. He puts $2 in the tip jar. Says 4-3 base defense and 3-4 in sub packages. I think the problem with that there, of course, go for it.
That's kind of what they do. If you watch the game against the Bengals and you saw random plays where TJ Watt was just in the middle of the defense, right, and walking up right towards the center, you look where Cameron Hayward is. Cameron Hayward's a strong side defensive end. They go to a 4-3 look at times to stop and support different run concepts, especially if they put two tight ends on one side of the field. They put Cameron Hayward over there and they say, yeah, you thought that was a strong side, but our strong side is better than yours, right? Cameron Hayward versus two tight ends, you're going to get absolutely destroyed. Cam Hayward's going to eat your lunch, right? That's what they normally do. They do a lot, and then you put TJ Watt in the middle to solidify the deep weakness there, and then you still have two linebackers behind him. You kind of have a five-man front. It's almost the old school 5-2 defense where the middle of the line guy was a linebacker and became the middle linebacker position. It's very old school, but it works until, Isaiah Buggs, Chris Wormley, Henry Mondeau are just getting blown off the line wherever they stand, and the offense can still run through them. But they kind of do. They do that for certain formations. They absolutely do.
Yeah, and with it as well, like in some of those sub packages, one of those guys typically also has to come off the field. So it makes it a bit of a challenge adding the extra DB or depending on what the situation is. But right now, what the Steelers need to do is tackle. The fundamentals are so bad right now. Thankfully, it seems like catching the ball, they got that under wraps. That was last year's fundamental issue. This year, it's tackling. What the heck is going on with that? Is that something, a practice problem, Jeffrey? Or is that these guys are just timid? Or what's going on with their inability to get guys down?
Some of it is momentum. I mean, if you're standing still and someone's crashing into you, you're losing that. And like Devin Bush had that arm tackle in the second play of the game against Cincinnati where Joe Mixon just ran right through him through his one arm. That was because he got there late. He was slow getting there because he's slow on the field this year. He just is. The guard got to it first. And Bush is reaching that arm, but it's not like a strong reaching your arm out where you're able to lean in and put any leverage into it. He's just reaching out, trying to grab a hold of Joe Mixon. And that's not going to stop a running back. That's not going to stop any NFL running back. You can just reach out and grab and put on the ground. It's not an NFL running back, right? That doesn't work. Wide receivers shouldn't be brought down like that. You have to have some pride as a player, not get brought down with that kind of garbage. Another thing is you're seeing Minkah Fitzpatrick miss tackles because that's Minkah Fitzpatrick. Minkah Fitzpatrick should not be up there making those tackles. That's not his strength. We saw his strength. It's out there in deep zone being like, don't throw anywhere near me or I'm taking it the other way. That's Minkah Fitzpatrick. When Minkah Fitzpatrick is a primary run stopper, you're going to see missed tackles. When you're the guys doing the most work in tackling are defensive backs, you're going to see missed tackles. When linebackers have horrible angles because they're getting blockers in their face, or with Devin Bush's case, he's just slow now, and he's got to adapt to being significantly slower than when he's used to. These things cause problems, but yeah, it goes beyond that too. It goes well beyond just being in the right position stuff. They've got to have some, I don't know, like. One of my stories for this game is Baltimore is a gut check for this team. Like, really, Baltimore is a big-time gut check for this team. If Baltimore runs all over the Steelers, that's like, what do you have left? That's it. You're done. You're not the Steelers anymore.
Yeah, this team is it already is searching for a new identity, but Sean Manahan puts $5 in the tip jar again. And he expands on his previous thought. He wants Cam Hayward and Chris Wormley at defensive end, the new guy from the Saints, and Isaiah Loudermilk inside as a true 4-3, not using a linebacker at an edge role. That's pretty interesting. Jeffrey, do you have any thoughts on going a full D-tackle defensive line with TJ Watt out of the lineup?
Okay, the fourth guy you're talking about is I mean, I understand you're saying, hey, throw that new guy in there. I understand. The only reason you're throwing that new guy in there is because you're saying hopefully he's better than what we have right now, which tells you a lot, right? Wormley's a liability in run defense. We move him out the defensive end outside. Okay, he's not going to be a liability in run defense as much. But Loudermilk plays end. When they try him inside, he's not very good yet. He is a 3-4 defensive end, and inside a defensive tackle, not as good. The guy they're getting from the Saints, we'll see. Maybe he will help. But I mean, you're talking signing a guy off a practice squad for a team that doesn't have a good defense. That's like, to me, it's kind of desperate. And who are you taking off the field to do that? Like, if you're dropping both Watt and Highsmith into regular linebacker roles, when Watt plays any kind of backed out linebacker role, he's not a great run defender there. He's much better in line. He's much better up there, making plays. If he's dropping back as a 4-3 linebacker, having coverage responsibilities, having different responsibilities in the run, he's not as good there. He hasn't been. I don't know about Alex Highsmith. I haven't watched him do that as much. He hasn't played as much in those situations. I understand what you're going for. I understand what you want. I don't see that working either. I really don't. Like, it would basically be built around, can this new guy be a big help to the Steelers defense? And if he can, then that's great. But if not, that's not working either.
Okay, we are rapidly approaching the end of our show here, Geoffrey Benedict. So I think it's time to get into our final score predictions of this game and how exactly we think it's going to go down. Geoffrey, why don't you take the floor first?
All right, you want me to go first?
Do it.
I can do this. All right. The Steelers were embarrassed by the Bengals. We might think the Lions, all that stuff, that's one game. The practice comments, Mike Tomlin, this team, the leadership on this team are going to respond to the gut check. And here's the question for me. Who are the leaders on this team? Who is going to lead in the rooms? Obviously, Cam Hayward, right? Cam Hayward's great, but he's not in the defensive back room. He's not in the offensive line room when they're talking their plays, when they're doing their walkthroughs. He can't go across the line and be like, hey, Kendrick Green, come on, man, step it up. Like, that needs to be from his own line. This is the point of the season where leaders are found because we don't have them already entrenched on these units. This is that point. And I think we see it. We saw the Steelers stop the run against the Browns when they couldn't stop the run against anyone else. I think we're going to see that. I think we're going to see a game plan from Keith Butler and Mike Tomlin working together, however that works. They work together and it works out a lot more than it doesn't. I think we see them scrap together a game plan that forces Lamar to pass the ball to win. And if Minkah Fitzpatrick is back there, man, Minkah's making plays. Baltimore does not have enough depth at wide receiver to really threaten the Steelers the way some of these teams have. A team like Cincinnati has, where they're 3 deep. Baltimore isn't. So my final score is going to involve a defensive touchdown. It's going to be 27-16 Steelers with a defensive touchdown. That's my prediction.
That would be nuts if the Steelers were able to pull that off and definitely really pull them out of the gutter. The problem is, I think the Steelers are so far in said gutter and are missing TJ Watt and missing Joe Hayden, and Ben Roethlisberger's playing poorly, and the line's getting worse. There's just a lot of fundamental issues with this team right now that I cannot see them overcoming them. I have a feeling the snowball effect and this team's mental attitude towards the season is just going to start spiraling out of control. This 3-game stretch, I got a feeling this is going to be kind of a groan, and you really hope it doesn't affect the entire end of the season. But the way the defense has just been walked upon, the offensive struggles to put points on the board, I'm leaning towards Baltimore winning this game in another not upset, but a heavy point differential in this one. I think Baltimore wins this game 35-17, and I hesitate to give the Steelers 2 touchdowns, but maybe that's wishful thinking, but until the Steelers can once again show me they can do it, they are just playing some poor football right now. But all that's going to be played out. It's any given Sunday, so they will have a chance, but I still think Baltimore takes this game. Unfortunately, I think that's the first time I ever picked the Baltimore Ravens to beat the Steelers, so that hurts. But anyways, Geoffrey Benedict, what do you want to plug before we sign out here?
One thing I want to plug is the Vertex article. I think it came out today. It did? Good. But it was on Devin Bush and the run defense and the defensive line. I put in some clips from 2020, early in the season, when they were all there, healthy. Bud Dupree, Tyson Alualu, Stephon Tuitt, Cameron Hayward, TJ Watt, Devin Bush, Vince Williams. So you can see, I went back and found 2 plays that were exactly like runs we saw at Cincinnati do. Almost the exact same run play, very exact same defense, and just see the difference between those two, between the two teams. You can see the difference in Devin Bush. You can see the difference in the defensive line. If you want to look at that, maybe you don't. I don't know if you're trying to hold on to positivity. But if you want to understand the difference, why this team isn't being able to stop the run, go check out that Vertex article. Eventually later this week, whenever Game Pass decides to get their act together and put the all-22 film out, I'm planning on doing one on Ben Roethlisberger's game he had against Cincinnati. Other than that, that's mainly it for me. Obviously, my show that comes out Tuesday. It comes out Tuesday at noon, right after Michael Beck's Live Mike. That comes out Tuesday morning. Go check those out on your podcasts, wherever you get podcasts.
That is beautiful, Geoffrey. Thank you so much for that glorious outro and plugging the 2 best shows on the podcast network.
My second favorite Tuesday show.
Wait, which one?
You're the Live Mike.
Oh, okay.
There's a show I just really like. It's called The Cutting Room Floor. I don't know. I really like that one too. Yeah,
it's got a fun intro. Yeah, no, I enjoy it.
No, you got the best intro of our podcast crew.
Yeah, Mike Tomlin just threw me a bone.
Yeah, it was great. Shouting you out in the press conference.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I was totally on purpose. Anyway, before we say goodbye to you guys, make sure you're clicking over to BehindTheSteelCurtain.com. It should, as we always say, should be your one-stop shop for all things Pittsburgh Steelers, from film rooms from Geoffrey Benedict to commentary. You name it, breaking news, injury reports, is all available as they happen at BehindTheSteelCurtain.com. So make sure you're clicking over to the website. And as Geoffrey Benedict said, make sure wherever you get your podcast, search Steelers, search Behind the Steel Curtain, will be popping up. And hey, if you're a big-time listener of the show too, as those Spotify year and wraps pop up, post them on Twitter. I know the BTSC account, we're sharing all these people that have been posting their screenshots of the BTSC being their most listened to show of the year. We love that, and we love the support from each and every one of you as we wind down 2021 here. So make sure you do that, and we'll make sure to like and push those screenshots. So make sure you're doing that if you have a Twitter account, and you can find Behind the Steel Curtain at BT Steel Curtain. So with all that being said, for my co-host Geoffrey Benedict, my name is Michael Beck. We'll catch you guys next week.